Great. All right, cool. Thank you. So let me share my screen. I have a presentation to share. So first of all, thank you for being here. I know this is like everything else, there's growing pains, but I will subscribe to Zoom if we're going to keep doing these and it'll be smoother. So the first thing is what's the agenda for this thing we're doing? And I would really appreciate participation. I have some things that I think would be interesting to talk about, but if you guys have ideas about what you'd like to talk about or ask about, please, I'd rather do what you're interested in than what I think is interesting. So let's start there. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to ask or show or anything on your mind?
Hey Lee, this is Suraj.
Hey,
Hey, yeah, I think what hoping to find out or learn more about is really how is everyone else using this tool? How far along have they come, depending on how long they've used the tool? And are they seeing the results they anticipated? And more so, kind of collaborating. That's really kind of what I was talking to Lee, that hoping to see that the Discord is more or less inactive on the channel. So hoping to see if people are doing their own thing, that's fine. But I think everyone brings some level of experience to trading, and that's something that hopefully by collaborating we can learn something more out of each other's style or how to improve on it or what have people tried that works, the limitations or the advantages of using Trade Unafraid versus something else. I think that's kind of what I'm looking for beyond what the agenda is.
okay. All right, great. So that a lot of that has to come from other users, not from me. I mean, I can share what I do, but does anybody else have anything they'd like to, how they would like to respond to what Siraj just asked?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. So I'm kind of new. I think I came to Trade Unafraid with a different mindset of what I use now. Thanks to Lee, we had a meeting about 2 weeks ago, and my original, I guess, idea was to just, and I come from the strat community. My idea was to just kind of take every 2-1-2, right, on the gappers, right? But with what Lee taught me was a little bit about how to collect data, right? You want to collect data. And so you want to, whatever idea you have or I had, I started collecting. And so I literally tracked about 30 setups, right? And the strat. And it takes times because we can't backtest. And so you kind of have to do this. I do this with Excel, and I'm kind of waiting for I guess, the AI course, data course that Lee's working on. But the way I do it is I collect data on 30 setups, right? So say I'm just gonna make stuff up. A 2-1-2 on a 7-minute chart, a 2-1-2 on a 10-minute chart, a 2-1-2 on a 30-minute chart, a 2-1-2 on a 60-minute chart, so forth, right? 30 of them, right? And from there, as time goes on, you start seeing which setups work and which ones don't. And so what I do is I start putting quote unquote real money behind the setups that are working and just kind of start eliminating that don't. And so now, as time goes on, you start to develop a basket of setups that are working right. And as time goes on, you'll start seeing that, hey, like this earnings winner, for example, a 2-1-2 will work better. Well, that's how I use it. It's not complex, but it takes a lot of time, right? It takes about an hour each day to track data. I'm tracking P&L parameters, if you will, like earnings, 20% gappers, so forth. And then I'm tracking how many trades does each setup have, because something like a 60-minute chart will have less hits, if you will, or trades than a 5-minute chart, right? But if a 5-minute chart kind of gives you the same P&L as a 60-minute chart, then I'll start tracking the lower timeframes. That's just me though.
So it sounds like the one variable that you're experimenting with is time frame. Is that true? Is that the only difference between your different?
Oh no, I have several setups. So like
Okay.
if you take the strat, I'll track a 2-1-2 continuation and reversal. I'll track 3 just by itself. Then I'll track a 3-2, and I'll just break this down individually, right? So that's how I end up with 30 or 40, right? Because I want to track as much as possible. And then as time goes on, right, you eliminate the losers, quote unquote, and start getting behind the winners. And so theoretically, that's when I started seeing my P&L kind of turn around, right? Because my original thought was like, if you listen to Rob, the old videos, he was like so gung ho about the 30s and 60s. Well, it's nice if you sit there all day and choose the best ones, right? But if you're stuck inside a mother bar with 30 and 60, you just get chopped up every day. You just start kind of like death by minute cuts. And so, but I don't want to be here all day. So what I started doing is, just see which ones work and just kind of like, it's like a real fund would do it, right? They start placing money behind their winning setups and start eliminating the losing setups. And then after, say, like 2 weeks or 100 trades, you start thinking about other setups that might work that you haven't thought about. Well, if you're getting stuck in a mother bar, well, then there's a way around it and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah. The mother bar filter is something that I plan to add. It's one of many things that we just never got to, but we will be able to filter out eventually anything that is inside of some time frame. Okay, so that was great. So you are actually trading, you've gotten past your experimentation and you're trading real money now?
Yeah, it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
You told me, right? Like you're like, hey, you need to break down like each setup, and then that's when you start seeing the data every day,
Yeah,
right? Versus having say 6 setups under one trade plan. And
right.
it becomes obvious these numbers will stick out at you. And so literally I was doing this while we're waiting for you. You just go into the trade history and I literally go down and see how each trade plan performed or setup, if you will. And then after 100 hits, I call them hits or trades, you get a real idea how bad some of these work and how some of them have potential and how some of them are working. So you just start kind of like eliminating and start putting money behind your winners, so forth. Go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering, what are you doing as far as the actual management? I mean, all we really have talked about at this point is the entries, but are you experimenting with different ways to manage the position, when to take profits and
Yeah. So each one I'm using, going back to my fake example, right? If you're checking a 2-1-2 on a 7-minute chart, that's say setup A. Well, setup B is a 2-1-2 with say like a $20 stop loss and a $5 take profit. And so under that 2-1-2, there's different parameters, right? There's a different exit tactic, if you will, or an entry tactic. Well, the entry is pretty much the same, right? You're taking a 2-1-2, but at the same time, you could break it down to a 2-1-2 with full time frame continuity on a 60-minute, right?
Mhm.
And it'll be the same thing. It's just different parameters or, use exits and so forth. And so that's how you end up with 30 or 40. And you could go crazy with this, right? Well, at least my way, you could. But it just takes time and patience, right? For the numbers to really start jumping at you.
Yeah.
I think I'll just start letting someone, and just to answer your other question. Yeah, I check the Discord every day. I'm in the Facebook every day, and it's up to us, right? Lee could only do so much.
Yeah, I wish it wasn't that way, but yeah, I've always been like too busy to include keeping up with the Discord. It's not ideal, obviously, but I wish I could do more, but I'm really hoping that we can all work together to build some momentum and find some winning systems, and then I'll be able to hire people and this will be better for everybody. So maybe I can even hire Ethan and Dylan back. That's a real long shot, I know. So Suraj, I'm kind of interviewing Alex for you, but do you have any questions like from what he said?
Yeah, maybe a few questions. Like Alex, now that you have tested that out for, I assume, a couple of weeks, months, or if 100 trades is the target, one, are you now, I think you mentioned that you are actually trading it. What are you seeing like in terms of returns, right? I mean, one of the things I was telling Lee is one of the things I think the challenge for most people who start trade unafraid is they need to get up to speed and get going, because otherwise you have this ongoing cost that you're trying to overcome. So my thing, I think for anyone for that matter, is you're trying to get through the growing pains of learning how to use it, what trade plans, and there are enough options within this program to change and figure out what works and what doesn't work. And but ultimately, end of the day, is you need to find a way to make some money so that it pays for the fees, and then you start to grow on it. And as you said, increase size as now you have built confidence in using the tool. So
It's not so much. I'm pretty. If I had to say it, I'm not big on increased size yet. It's definitely to a point where it's worth it. And so, without going into like real numbers, right? Say you have a setup, right? It makes $10 a day, right? That's only one setup, right? But you have 20 of those or 10 of those, right? It starts to add to $100 and $200 a day.
sure.
I'm not thinking about one setup making $10,000 a day, right? That would be nice. Because the way I trade and the stocks that I trade, um, I'm betting more on the portfolio setups, right? If I show you the P&L was set up, it's not profitable every day, right? But I have a portfolio of setups that are profitable over the long term. Now it's worth it, right? It could have, say, 10 setups earning $25 a day. That's my approach, right? Someone else might be different. But it's just the way because when I started with Lee, I was like, hey, I want to take every 2-1-2 on the 60-minute or whatever, right? And he's like, well, what else, right? Because the market conditions change and so forth. And that's when he's like, hey, you need to start tracking like a 2-1-2, for example. Does it perform better if the gap percentage is up 20%, right? Or if you include is it better with a $10 stop loss versus a $15 stop loss? I'm just making numbers up. And so that's when you start becoming like, it's not so much of a P&L. I started thinking about a portfolio P&L. I'm like, well, I have this tool, right? And theoretically, I could track 1 million setups, right? I mean, Lee might not like it because I'm gonna start taking all the server space. But say you track 100 setups, right? And say I don't know what you trade, but let's say you track a gap for like 2-1-2 with a $20 stop loss, a 2-1-2 with a $30 stop loss. Well, if you track different scenarios and different stuff, right? Now you have a whole portfolio that you could get behind of, and I use like a very basic Excel sheet. The numbers will jump at you immediately, and you start realizing like, hey, this one's pretty consistent. This one's not consistent. This one's okay, and so forth. And this one's just a straight out loser. And so you start replacing the straight out losers with a new idea, right? Now let's try a 2-1-2 with a 60-minute behind it or something like that. And so I think more about a portfolio versus one setup, right?
So, and I'm curious because one of the things that you and I talked about is how there are different market regimes, or today was a very different day from what we've experienced in quite a while. Did you see a difference in today's performance versus the last few weeks?
Yeah. And it's because a couple of weeks ago, I didn't have as much data, right? And now I know today was like the ultimate test. Whereas, like, hey,
Yeah.
your setup should work today. There's more volatility, there's more stuff moving. And so today it worked fine. I was like, I was here watching, but I was like, and I could have just flattened out for major profit, but on a regular day, I wouldn't be here. Right.
Hmm.
And so over time, I believe the P&L swings should start to smooth out. And that's what's been going on with me. It's like whatever my original trade ideas, I guess, have been proven wrong. And the ones that I didn't think about have been kind of showing the bright spots. And today they came into fruition. You're like, oh, right. Like now I could get, now if this, now say if a 2-1-2 with a 60-minute behind I'll start focusing on that, right? So it's kind of like trend following, but you got to play, you have to collect data. That's where the biggest thing is, I think, in terms of mentality of when I started Trade Unafraid versus today is like you could create your own little hedge fund, if you will, right? Just have like 10 setups and maybe start tracking 10 more, right? And when those 10 more start from the bright side, start another 10. And that's all I do. It's like the hard part is stock selection, right? And to this day, man, I have tracked like 1,000 gappers, and I don't know which ones are going to be like the top performers or whatever. You might get stuck inside a mother bar or something like that. And it's just, to this day, I don't know. That's why I just kind of play the numbers game.
Yeah, nobody knows. And that's really, it's taken me a long time to get to this point, but I've come to really embrace the idea that this is pure statistics. And you can try and predict the future, but you're never going to get it right all the time. So you have to deal with the consequences either way. And I don't want to shift to my agenda, but part of what I wanted to talk about is, and I've adopted these avionics terms, but Trade Unafraid can be either a wingman or an autopilot. And so the wingman is you use it like you use any other trading platform, but it's there working with you so that it can manage, you can use a candle trail, or you can have some kind of dynamic entry so you don't have to be there to enter it, those kinds of things, which I do every day. I'm in 2 trading rooms and I'm using it like a wingman every day. But the other really interesting thing is this idea of an autopilot, that you don't even have to touch it. You just are a data scientist who creates these trade plans. And that's basically what you're talking about, Alex. It sounds like you're not ever trading manually or discretionary. Is that true?
No, that's true. Just to give you a little bit of background, I had a very good 2020, and I just kind of been going through the emotions of figuring out this quote unquote non-Wall Street bets market, COVID market. And yeah, it's amazing. I think that one talk that we had really opened my eyes as to what you can do, right? It's like, why stop at one setup or why stop at 10, right? Obviously everyone's accounts differs, but I have a hedge fund, just to I don't want to take your time. I have a hedge fund buddy, and this is how they trade. They literally, the only difference is we can't back test, right? Or you probably could if you hire someone, but that's all they do. It's like, hey, let's try this ORB on a Tesla 5-minute and with a take profit with 1%. And if they see like a positive expectancy, well, they'll just put money behind it. And then they'll just tell this Princeton grad, hey, let's do that on NVIDIA. And that's all they do, really. And this is how I kind of like got this light bulb moment from Leon. Like, well, if we're gonna be trading a 212, let's try testing it with a $15 stop loss, a $20 stop loss, a $25 stop loss, and then let's take a $5 profit or something like that, right? You start getting creative, and now all of a sudden, the simple setup that you have has so many variables to it, right? And it's still a setup, it's still a 212, but you have so many variables that you could track. Gap percent, in my case, right? Gap percentage, take profit, stop loss, candle trails, and so forth from one setup. And it just takes a little bit of work. But if you're going to be working, it has to be worth it, right?
Right. Yeah, and one of the things I can't remember, I know I talked to Suraj about this. I can't remember if you and I talked about it. I think we did, but I'm very into lately taking a small early profit and getting safe. So, because one of the things I want to do with the data analysis that I haven't done yet is looking for positive skew, which is basically, it'll be like a histogram of how many trades land in certain P&L buckets. And what you really want to see is a skew towards positive. And so even if you have lots of small gains but fewer losses, and then you have some outsized gains, that overall gives you a winning system. So the idea there is take something off and get yourself safe. and then see if you get any follow through or not. So that's a big hypothesis for me that I think that's a way to go. The interesting thing is, I think I haven't confirmed it yet, but I think in my back testing, it's the ones that you just let ride that have actually outperformed. The problem is you got to gut those out. You know, there are days when you don't want to be trading that way. But there are ways to deal with that as well. I'm trying to be very practical in my forward testing. Like, would I be able to put real money on this? And you know, when you have $3,000 per day losses, that's a tough one. But what I'm trying to figure out is, can I predict that it's going to be a $3,000 a day loss when it's only at $500? So I'm trying to dig into the data and find edges everywhere that I can. So does the whole data science thing interest you guys, or is that just me being a nerd? I mean, are you as intrigued as I am by the idea of doing this deep analysis on a large amount of trade data?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I guess if I think you had the right idea with the email course you sent out, what was it, like a couple of months ago?
yeah,
But like someone like me who's comes from like a industrial business, I have no idea what's Python or how to even code a line of Python, right? Or
yeah,
where even start. So yeah, I kind of got stuck in the middle,
yeah.
but at the end of the day, you just gotta start somewhere, right?
I'm hoping that just like Trade Unafraid doesn't require you to code, that the data part won't either. That you can just plug your data in and out comes all the results. The only thing is you'll be limited to what I've implemented or somebody else has implemented. Whereas it's great if you can do it yourself, but if we're going to do this mastermind idea, then hopefully there'll be multiple people and we'll be able to figure out what we need and prioritize it. So I think it's going to continue to get better. Let's see, what else? Do you guys agree with, I'm kind of looking at my agenda because I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in, interrupt me, please. But do you guys agree with the whole idea of trading is an unnatural act and that you're much better off if you can get software to do the execution? Or am I alone in that? Because I'm the worst trader in the world.
I
Yes, you.
do.
Yeah.
I think Lee, I think that's one of the things that we spoke about is there's something to be said. One for it just takes the emotion out of the trade, right? It just works every time with no hard feelings, and it takes the profits and losses just like it does based on how you set it up. And the other thing, obviously, I think is the speed at which it basically can exit and enter a trade, which is just unbeatable compared to you manually doing it. Even if you had a ladder or any other kind of DOM, it's just so fast. And all of us, while you can't look at the screen and focus on it, any news event, any thing nowadays on social media or any analyst, it just can trigger something on the fly. And especially if you're trading and with size, I think it's instrumental, right? That something like Trade Unafraid can get you in and out so quick. Just like Alex mentioned, I have like 4 trade plans that are just working on a daily basis. I'm not trading real money, it's just simulation. And the days that they're losses, and the days like today where kind of a crazy ass day, but it made a lot of money naturally because of volatility and you know the speed of what it moved. And so the days like this where, as haphazard as it be, even though it's an overall down day, there were up moves, especially the last half an hour. I caught both sides of it. And I think that's where, at least I view this as something more of a, you can put in autopilot. I think I turned it on about 11 Central and it ran till about 2. I did like 122 trades, obviously more than I would ever do.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not doing the work. I just have the plan there and it's doing whatever I've told it to do. Kind of like Alex, just collecting data for now, seeing how it works. And that's kind of what I was talking to Lee is like, I know like some of you guys have probably been here longer. Have you got into your comfort zone that you kind of know what you like? You have a setup that you like, you're working it, even though it may not be profitable every day, but you kind of know that it has an edge. And the data science part of it is obviously that's something that's going to further give you the confidence when you go into drawdowns that there is a true edge in your system. But that's kind of what made my interest was. I'm still fairly new. I tried this out maybe 2 years ago, and then I came back to try this again about 2 months ago. So I'm kind of new into it, but definitely like what I'm seeing, but I still have, more work ahead to get it going.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you guys feel about sharing trade plans? I'm assuming everybody is aware that you can export and import trade plans so that what I intend to do is I'm going to share with you guys the trade plans I've been running in 2023, along with all of the data that I've gathered. It may not be the way you want to trade, but it's a starting point. And there are definitely some profitable plans in there. And I'm talking about over a long period of time. I think it's a starting point. And I think if you guys have trade plans that you think are profitable and you'd be open to sharing them, then I just think a real mastermind like this, where we're all working together, we could do some very nice work. Does that interest you guys?
I'm for it.
For $197 a month, I could give you all the trade plans you want. Just to kind of touch back on the previous question, I'm also in another room. And I think for me, I'm kind of like the mental energy spent, right, is what's worth it. I think that's probably the stress and the whole, it's black and white. That's probably what's worth it for me. I was on the mic with someone this morning, and they're like, oh, what do you think the Fed is going to do? What the CPI is going to do? And, is the market going to go up? Is the market going to go down? I just told them, I don't care, man. Like at this point, it's just, I don't think about that stuff.
Yeah.
I'll be interested in the trade plans more in not so much the P&L, but like how others are thinking about a trade, the exit tactics they're using and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm also curious. I know some people are using the TradingView webhook. How many? Is anybody on the call doing it? That sounds like a no. I've dabbled with it. I have not really stuck to it because I think I've said this already, but I've kind of decided setups don't matter, entries don't matter. I mean, I know that's overstating it, but I really think it's all about money management. And that's why all my testing has been done with just 1 minute outside candles. So that's at least the premise I'm working on. But I can imagine that if you had a setup that was better than something that stupid of a setup, then you could do very well if you are managing the position well. I can see where using a webhook would be really nice because we have a limited number of setups and there are many other ways that you can analyze a chart.
Lee,
Yeah.
how's that speed of the webhook? I haven't tried it, because I need to learn Punch script or whatever. Is that connection like instantaneous or is this like because I'm afraid like TradeView is slow and then for exits or whatnot, and then by the time it gets to TU and then TradeView has to get to trade, there's like two hops, right? So
no, it's actually surprisingly fast. It's from what I've seen, there's no noticeable lag. I mean, honestly, I'm saying that, but it's not like I was watching TradingView at the moment that it happened, but it seems like if you set up alerts so that
yeah,
TradingView lets you know.
XYZ condition happen and then enter or exit, whatever, right? So yeah, because I mean like the alert on TradingView would be like if XYZ condition happen, whatever
Yeah.
technical, whatever, right? And then you would enter or exit. I'm just giving hypothetical example here, right? Is it like seconds or is it nearly instantaneous between that trigger and TU and then trader execution? Is what I'm kind of wondering.
I can't really say because it's not like I was watching TradingView, but what I was going to say is if you set up an alert for TradingView for just hitting a price level, it happens as fast as it does in TOS or something like that. And I don't think there's going to be that much lag between when the audible alert happens and when the webhook gets sent.
Okay.
You know,
So that was one thing that was kind of stopping me from because I was afraid there was like potential lag,
Yeah.
usually or whatnot. Yeah. So
we could ask Wouter. He's the one I interviewed about a month ago. He's using it, and Andrew Fry is also using it. So I know that they're using it, and I haven't heard anybody say anything about how it's too slow. So I
okay.
get the feeling it's quick. Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that from the Trade Unafraid perspective, there would be no difference between receiving a webhook and clicking enter long or enter short manually because it's essentially the same thing. It's like the event comes in, the trade plan gets created, and you're off and
I mean,
running.
ideally, I would think it'd be faster, right? Because it's an API call, which is millisecond versus human. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah,
But who knows? I haven't tested that, so I don't.
yeah, but I really think the difference would be negligible. So I don't think it would be a problem.
Okay.
Um, Okay. I'm not sure what I've missed in here. Has anybody said anything that I've missed that you want to talk about? Thank you, Dan, by the way, for offering to share. Dan had some very interesting stuff on his server. He had basically staged trade plans where like one would trigger and then when enough I think price movement had happened, the next one would trigger, and then there was a third one. So that's another interesting notion to think about is doing something where you actually have multiple trade plans, all part of a bigger premise.
Yeah, so that's what Lee.
Yeah.
That's where I'll be very interested. I know you tweeted some stuff out how some, I guess, edges perform better like in the first 2 hours for the second 2 hours. And I can't get that right now. And so how would one go about that? Like the only way I could think about it is setting like an alarm clock and just starting the trade plan after.
Oh no. There's actually a time of day filter. So you can create a trade plan that will only enter trades between some start time and an end time.
Yeah, because some of my trades on the smaller time frames, I noticed in the first 5 minutes I'm down a lot. But then as time goes on, it starts getting better, right? And so I didn't know how to filter that. So I'll look into it then.
Yeah, it's actually pretty easy. The UI could be a little bit better because you have to type in the hours and the minutes of start and the end. But yeah, it's pretty obvious. But
because say if you're using the strat, right, and you're using a 5-minute time frame out of the gate, it counted as a 2 up, 2 down from the previous day, right?
Right.
And so there's a lot of, I guess, I don't know how would you label that, but I'll take the previous day last candle and use today's the very first candle, and so it kind of throws off my data. And so I caught this early on, and so I kind of been working around it, but I didn't know you could I'll figure that out.
Yeah, so like if you're on a 5-minute time frame, then you would not want to start until that first 5-minute candle has completed.
Yeah. Okay. See, the mastermind paid off already.
Yeah, that's right. I really, it's a very small group at the moment, but I really do think we can learn from each other. And I don't want to, let's see, it's 5:15. Yeah, so I don't want to go too long, but I did want to at least talk about this. I don't know if you guys have one way that you like it versus the other or both, but I wanted to just kind of talk about the features that enable each of these two approaches, just to make sure you're aware. Obviously, with the wingman approach, meaning you're trading manually and you have Trade Unafraid helping, you're still in the context of a trade plan. You have the ribbon of quick buttons for adding and closing or adding to and removing from your position. I love those so much. I mean, that alone makes it so much better than using any other trading platform, because you don't have to worry about any other orders that are out there. You can just freely add or take profits, and it just handles it all for you. The ease of picking an option, like just having an ITM or OTM strike, that's obviously something that makes it easier to use. Oh, that was selection. Being able to place orders based on the underlying price rather than the option price. I know you can do that in TOS and other things, but it takes time. It's not an easy thing to do. This is one, I think, an underrated benefit is the ability to pause and unpause tactics. Like there are times like when I know that we're approaching support, but I'm also approaching my loss limit, and I'll pause the loss limit, which I know is, there's definitely risk to doing that. You could end up with a larger loss, but it's worked out for me multiple times. So that ability to pause, but then unpause without having to recreate orders is a wonderful thing, I think. Dynamic automated entries is great. You don't have to be watching. I set up trade plans and then I move on to the next thing, and they just fill when they fill. Conflicting orders, meaning, like the classic OCO bracket that I talk about, that if you have 10 contracts and you want to take 5 off, if they're in an OCO bracket, you have to mess with the OCO bracket to make room to take those off. And you don't have to deal with that with Trade Unafraid. I know you guys know this stuff, but I wanted to just underscore these important things. And then because you're in a trade plan, it's easy to have small losses and let winners run. I still struggle with the emotional aspects when I'm manually trading, but having Trade Unafraid as my wingman, I swear it's made me a better trader even on other platforms, because I've just gotten used to accepting losses better because they happen automatically. So I've kind of developed that muscle. So if things aren't going right, I just get out. And then the autopilot aspect, I think one of the key things here is reproducible repeating trade plans. So you get consistent data, you handle things consistently, and that gives you the ability to then analyze and tweak things. Obviously, no coding required. The data science, which I'm going to get to you guys hopefully in the next, let's say, hopefully by the end of the weekend, you guys are going to have the ability to do what I've shown you guys, and hopefully you'll start reaping the results of, or the benefits from that. Obviously, hands-off, consistent, fast execution. You don't, and bypassing all the emotions. I really think that's the future of trading for most of us, is just finding trade plans that make us passive income. And that's a beautiful thing if we can make that actually happen. Yes, I did say that, Dan. I do pause my loss limit sometimes, but I always trade with a size that I can live with. So I don't ever get myself into, I've developed some good habits. I really started out as a terrible trader. And I swear that's why Trade Unafraid exists, is because I was the worst. I believed in my setups. It's like I approach trading as an engineer instead of as a statistician. I would do dumb things because I had already done the analysis and I knew that it had to go up. So I'd trade too big and I'd trade too confident. And boy, I lost a lot of money doing that. But I don't do that anymore. Oh, Dan may have left and missed that. But anyway, there's a recording. Okay, Don's a wingman user. I know that. So we actually have names now for wingman and autopilot. That's kind of cool. Okay, and we've kind of talked about which use. So I don't know. Are we done? Like, is this terrible at trading? Yep. Yep. Follow the rules. Yeah, and that's what's great about having a trade plan, is the rules are laid out and they just get executed. So
I have a quick thing to say if you have
Yeah.
a second, Lee.
please.
So just kind of give you a little bit of background. I don't know if I've talked with you about this before, but I think you knew this. So started trading more actively, I guess, with Rob in 2000 up until he passed away. One of the things that was really beneficial to me was having a macro sort of view of what the market is doing that day and that week, which, and since he's passed, is more difficult for me to consistently be aware of. For instance, not taking a long position when the market's selling off and vice versa. I don't know. I've not been able to recreate that and looked a couple different places to see if I could kind of get a feel for it. But having an active sort of room or environment, and I know there are a couple that are out there where you instantly know, okay, well, it would be bad to get long today. So I just wanted to just kind of throw that out there. You and I have talked about other things about Trade Unafraid in the past, which I don't want to bring up. I think the program is brilliant. I consistently will take losses if I get in there punching around on buttons, but if I just let it do its thing, losses are small and winners will usually run. But it's very difficult for me to trade consistently, with a win ratio consistently above 50% if I don't have a good feel for what the overall market's doing. I don't know if you want to talk on that or anything like that. I mean, there's other communities that are out there, but I've not been able to replace that kind of relationship that I had with Rob. And so
I sympathize with that more than you can ever imagine because Alex wants to say something. Let me just say this, Alex, and then you can speak. I feel like I don't know if I've said this and you've heard it before, but like I always wanted to be a drummer, but I have no rhythm. And it's the same thing with markets. I can look at a chart and make a case for both directions. I have no idea. I really don't. And so, it sounds like you kind of have the same thing. It's like long or short, I don't know. And so there are people who are better at that than you and I think. But I think that what you said, it's like if your win rate is 50%, as long as your gains are larger than your losses, that's still a winning trade plan. So, that I know that doesn't help with picking direction, but that's one of the things about the automation that's so nice is if you can cut your losses short and let your winners run, then 50% is actually good enough. But anyway, go ahead, Alex.
Just wanted to throw it out there that I also come from Rob's room, the Sepia Discord in there. JJ and John, he is on the mic like Rob for free nowadays. And he has a good pulse. It's almost like hearing Rob almost. And there's only like 3 of us in there. And he'll kind of guide you, like Rob used to say, control traffic or whatever. It's free. I could get you an invite, and I think you'll love it. He has a great feel of the direction of the market, and it's like hearing Rob. He's from Chicago. He was like, I don't know, like a mile away from Rob, and so it's kind of hearing like Rob talk. And I think he's probably the last guy left that I know of that's on them all day.
yeah, I think I've still got JJ's number. I might give
Yeah.
him a text. I haven't
Yeah.
talked to him in a while. So
If you need help, I'm in there every day on the mic with them. We obviously trade different styles. I stick to Rob Scapper still. I still I tweet out a list every day. Yeah, so I'm in there with JJ. JJ's amazing, man. If you're looking kind of like a Rob quote unquote replacement, JJ's on the mic all day. Literally, it's just 3 or 4 of us in there. And it's like hearing Rob. He's controlling traffic, telling you reminding you to keep your stops tight, let your winners run. You should be focusing on. He's been big on oil lately. I think Nvidia and Tesla lately. So he'll direct you if you're missing that. And it's like hearing Rob. He's from Chicago, eating pizza and so forth. And it's only 3 or 4 of us in there, so we'll welcome anybody at this point.
Yeah, that's awesome, Alex. Suraj said, can you share the link? And
Yeah,
I think everybody would like to know that.
Yeah, and we're on the mic. It's free. He loves, like Rob, he just likes helping people out. He's directing traffic. He's not charging for anything at this point. It's only 3 of us or 4 of us in there throughout the day. And it's great to keep the strat going, right? For those of us that come from the strat. I was in the background trading gappers for so long, and then started trading with Trade Unafraid and seeing how I could automate some of my ideas, right? And just simple stuff I think I broke my server once. I took every inside one on Tesla and NVIDIA, and I took like 3,000 trades. And just keeping like a break even stop. And yeah, I've tested a lot of Rob's ideas and so forth. But you guys are more than welcome. I'll talk to JJ tomorrow, first thing in the morning, and be like, hey, can I send this invite? And he'll be, yeah, I just want to get his permission first.
Awesome. Great. So I don't want to go too long and make this like you never want to do this again. So I just want to know, was this useful and would you like to do this again? Okay. All right, good. Everybody's saying yes. Okay, so what do you think? Every 2 weeks? Should it be more? Should it be less? Any thoughts? Bi-weekly? Okay. All right, great. And if we can be more active in Discord, or if Discord's not good, then we could look at some other platform, but Discord seems fine. But it seems like we should start sharing what we have in a more detailed way so that we can actually learn from each other, even if we're not in a meeting. There's a channel in Discord that has trade plans, but it's very old stuff, and I don't know that anybody has shared anything recently. So we could either add to that or we could figure out some other way of doing it. What would really be useful is you share the trade plan along with some data, and then you could look at it. You don't have to actually provide the data if you could provide some charts, I guess, from the data mining stuff. So we'll figure that out. Okay, so are we good? Should we call it a wrap? Or if anybody has anything else? Okay. All right, great. Thanks a lot. I'm so glad I wasn't here talking alone. It's great to have you guys participating, and thank you and happy trading. All right. Thanks, guys. And Peter, thank you for doing this. And if you could send me the recording, please.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much. Take care, guys.